What up? Welcome to Homegrown Hustle, where local brilliance takes the center stage. I'm your host, Matt Eichmann. Join us every week in celebrating innovation, guidance, and the power to inspire greatness. Let's explore the stories that shape our local business landscape, and together, let's ignite the spark of excellence. Hey, hustlers. I'm here with one of my good friends, Adam Thompson. Our team at Abracadabra has worked with Adam quite a bit a few years ago as we've been growing our leadership team and the individuals of leaders that we have on our team.
Yeah, my name is Adam Thompson. I am the owner and chief accountability officer, which is a fake made up title that I put on my business card and because I think it looks interesting, of a company called Focal Point Coaching. Yeah, right. It comes out of the time when everyone was making up their own titles. I made up mine. So I liked it. Look, I believe that success in business should not come at the expense of everything else. And what I mean by that is I work with business owners who have successful businesses who want to find ways to build a better version of their business that allows them to actually enjoy their own success, which in my world means spending more time doing what they love with the people they love, right? I find that business owners, they start a business, they buy a business, they build something great, and it becomes all consuming in their world, right? And they get to this point where they feel like everything's on them, everything's on their shoulders, and they don't know how to get out under the weight of their own business. And what that means is on paper, business is great, but it also means that they probably haven't taken a real vacation in a long time. They probably don't shut the office door soon enough. They're not getting home for dinner. They're missing, Johnny's choir concert or Susie's softball game, and they're missing out on the life they wanted to live. That is the reason they got into a business for themselves in the first place. So, my why, what I do is to help create happier, more well-adjusted, more well-balanced business owners here in Minnesota.
Adam, when you're at these, let's just say like a new customer intake, and you've got like mission, vision, values, that's big for these smaller businesses. Are there some type of questions that you're asking to kind of tease some of those things out of them, or is it pretty clear right when you have that interaction?
I mean, it's never clear up front, right? My first conversation with anybody is usually I ask one question. You know how you're at a party and you meet a woman and she says, yeah, "What do you do for a living?" She says, "I'm a doctor." And you go, "Oh, I got this this thing on the back of my neck. Take a look at it. What do you think?" Right? And suddenly you're
Hmm.
dumping your whole medical history onto this person you just met at a barbecue 2 minutes ago. There can tend to be the same thing if I meet someone and they say, "What do you do?" I say, "Oh, I'm a business coach," and they just kind of start vomiting out everything about their business, right? Everything that's wrong with it.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times my first conversation is just me saying, "Hey, so how's business?" And then 20 minutes later, I go, "Oh, okay, that was a lot. Why don't we maybe spend a little more time and dig into it, right?" And then we try to get
Hmm.
into more specifics.
So let's flip that then. How about I ask you how's business, and then you tell me what's going on in your world and everything right now. So how's business, Adam?
Matt, business is great. I am having a ton of fun. I love what I do. Every day is the same in that there's process and structure to what I do, and every day is different in that every client looks different.
Hmm.
Every issue they have, even though they're in many cases the same types of problems, they all manifest themselves differently in different businesses,
Hmm.
right? Everyone's got issues with, team time, money, clarity, right? That's all the problems, right? You either don't have a team and need one, you have a team, but they're not doing the work they should be doing, or in many cases, you have a team and they're excellent, but you as the owner won't get out of their way to let them do what
Hey,
they do.
I've fallen into that one before.
Everybody,
It's hard.
everybody does. It's your baby, man. You formed it, in your own two hands, and it's hard to let go sometimes. So, team issues, time issues, right? How do I, as the owner, get some time back, right? How do I unwind myself from this thing I've created that has now kind of pulled me into its orbit and I can't escape it, right? And a lot of
Hmm.
time that goes back to maybe I need to let my team do better work so I can get out of their way, so I can close the office door at 5 or take a vacation or go see Johnny's soccer game or, Susie's softball
Hmm.
game, whatever it might be. Money's money, right? How do you make more? How do you keep more? And then clarity is usually just like, what do you want your business to be when it grows up, right? And That's so you kind of asked, where do we start? We start there. What are we trying to do?
Hmm.
What are we to accomplish? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? Why aren't you there now? What's the gap look like? And then let's figure out how to, close the gap. So for me, my world's great, right? It's fun. I love it.
I love that. But I mean,
Answer.
I think that's probably the best answer we could have gotten here. Is
Okay.
that the answer that you get from most people when you have a first interaction? Or is it more problem, problem, problem? I've got this, and they kind of unload the stress out onto you.
Nobody ever says, I would love to tell you about all the things that are going well in my business, right? I mean, again, I'll use that doctor analogy. You never go to the doctor and say, hey, doc, here's where I feel great. Let's start there, right? You're going to start with, my
Hmm.
knee hurts every time I do this thing. What's that all about? Right? You never talk about, hey, my back and my shoulders feel great. You start with your knee. So so much of what I do is, I mean, I'm not really here to provide the solution. I'm here to guide them to finding their own solution, right?
Hmm.
Which is really just, I mean, at the end of the day, it's good management, right? One of your people comes to you with a problem, and you know
Hmm.
the answer. You can solve it for them, and they may or may not implement your solution, and may or may not stick it through because it's you telling them what to do. But if you help them figure out their own solution and provide them the resources and the tools and the support to achieve that solution, they're going to own it and go out and do it. So my role
Hmm.
is to try to provide that, provide the guidance, try to give them tools to think through it, ask questions, try to dig around and find a real solution and how we implement it. And then also, frankly, hold them accountable to it, right? Make sure that, okay, when we come back next week, next month, whenever it is, here's the things we kind of outlined of what you're going to do, what I'm going to do. The first thing
Hmm.
we do is work through, did we get those things done? And that third piece would be remind them of the wins, right? We always hit action items from last session. We always hit wins from last session because there's a point where any business owner, they show up and they're, down on the dauber about whatever, because they kind of just remember the losses, right? You remember the strikeouts, you don't remember the home runs. And I am here to remind them of all the good things they're doing and all the success they've had. So they come to me with the losses, I remind them of the wins, and then we dig into the fix.
So so looking at management, one thing we've been talking about at Abracadabra, because we've worked hard, you know this, focusing on building leaders that can make those decisions is one thing that I've learned as we've gone through and grown Abracadabra and doing it alongside my brothers and building our team. I'm realizing that like there's managing and then there's leading. Right. So we're kind of talking about those two things. So when you say manager versus leader, is there like some type of delineation or way that you think about those words, or are they kind of interchangeable in your mind?
Question. I think it's a yes and. I mean, there's certainly delineation, right? I mean, you've read E Myth, right? You know it. The three eyes of the entrepreneur, three eyes of the business owner. You've got the entrepreneurial mindset, the manager eye, and the technician eye, right? And your goal as the owner is to stay in those top, the entrepreneurial spot and the management spot, right? I look at let's talk about leadership, and that is I like a boat analogy in that sense. And the leader is at the mast at the front of the boat, kind of gazing into the future, right? Gazing into the distance and saying, we're going to go to that island out there. And we're going to go to that island because of this. And here's the reasons. And here's why it's going to work. And here's what we're going to find there. And here's why it is good for everybody, right? Kind of rallying the troops around this mission to get to that island, right? And it's usually pretty forward thinking, right? I think in space management is probably, you know, down below or, a little bit further back, looking at the map and looking at what's been behind us, right? And evaluating the course we've been taking on, hey, have we been going the right direction? Have we been taking the most efficient route to this island as a way of kind of setting up and planning a better path moving forward, right? So
Hmm.
management is probably it's maybe a little more looking back, right? It's looking at the numbers, it's talking to your people about here are the results we've had and how do those compare to the results we want and what do we need
Hmm.
to do better. So, one is very forward looking, one is a little more rear view mirror, but in the context of we want to get better moving forward. Does that
Hmm.
help?
It does. No, that's fantastic. Like you can't really get better if you're not looking at the track record, right? Like if you're not really taking a step back and reviewing that, how do you really identify if there are gaps other than that feeling or the emotion, whatever type of indication kind of gets you moving in a different direction or not? Like those are kind of the options. So for the sake of this conversation, I think maybe if we kind of focus on a couple key things that keep popping up in conversations, whether it's
Yeah.
at a mastermind table or whether it's just one on one with the entrepreneur, but like, are there similarities that you see kind of across all of those? Or is it each business vertical or size or revenue plateau, whatever it might be? Each one of those has its own set of problems.
I think honestly, I'll use abracadabra as the example, if you don't mind. And I mean, the work that
Let's do it.
we did with your squad, and it was for a couple of months. You and I met one to one, right? And we worked on things, and you wanted to develop your leadership and move yourself squarely into that CEO type role, right? The leader of the business. And we spent some time on you and how you spent your time and what you were doing, and how you could do more of these things and fewer of these lower level things. And where we got to you, and the point was the best thing for you to allow you to be that visionary, right? Be that entrepreneur, be that CEO, and that leadership role, was to coach up your team, right? Because the sooner they got into a spot where they were comfortable and confident in their leadership abilities and their management abilities, the more things they could take off your plate and put on theirs, which was going to allow you to go out and be the face of the organization, right? Scout the next location, right? Open up satellite office number 2, satellite office number 3, right? Find bigger, better services and ways to grow the business, build better relationships and better partnerships, do more things like Chamber of Commerce work, more things like this, more things like podcasts
Hmm.
that build your brand, allow you to tell the story in a way that's worked for you. And so you and I pretty much stopped working together, and I just started working with your team. And
Hmm.
if there is a common theme among what I do, it is, I mean, yeah, money's always an issue. Yeah, clarity is always an issue. Yes, team stuff's always an issue. But generally, when I'm getting a phone call, when I'm talking to someone, it's an owner is inextricably entangled in their business, right?
Yeah.
And they built something successful, right? Their business is healthy and they're doing well. And yeah, there's always more money you can make. There's always more money you can keep, but they're making money, they're profitable, they're doing the right things, and everything is on their shoulders as the owner. Every major decision falls on them. They feel responsible for every aspect of the business, and in many cases, it's by their own design. They've kind of built this business where they are like the key cog, and everything just revolves around them, and be successful that way. But it's hard to scale, and it's hard
Hmm.
to sell, right? Because you're too important in the business. And so a lot of the work is, how do we get you out of the business so that A, you've got a more valuable business, and B, you can actually leave and, I don't know, take a vacation, right? Go watch the kids play, soccer, right? Go, take
Hmm.
your spouse out to dinner, right? Have a long weekend and not freak out about it. So that's most of the focus. I mean, if there's a driving
So,
force behind what I do, it's that.
so is it, because I know for myself, I was in that exact boat that you kind of just
Yeah.
described, where there was so much there. And through some of the conversations, kind of what we teased out is there was a lot of things that other people could do and actually ended up doing better than me that I just like held on to and kind of took that learning opportunity away from that person who's trying to grow in my organization, and they're trying to take on more responsibilities and be challenged. But when the owner is sitting there saying it has to happen this way or be done this way, well, now nobody wants to mess it up,
Yeah.
right? Nobody wants to step in and do something that maybe the owner is just going to kibosh. And now you got to start back over after you've just kind of gotten tore down by the boss. But I mean, so what I found is a lot of times, is at least in my case, it was like a self inflicted type of I can't remember what you called it, but there's that much strangling them because of they got to decide everything. So I saw that but I also saw that there were leaders in our organization that still needed to grow. We were very young. Everybody in our organization is young. So when that experience isn't there, there's only a couple ways you can learn things. And my dad still tells us this: you can do things the easy way, or you can do them the hard way. And the easy way is like learning from other people's experience, right? And then the hard way is like doing it yourself. I'm a pretty hard headed guy, so I run into a lot of the do it yourself type of things. But really, what I realized is I didn't even have the skill set necessary to coach them into those roles, because the roles that they had in place were new roles that I never really held. It was like all these 5 or 6 or 7 roles, all the different hats, right? And as you're growing, now you can take some of these hats off and other people can wear them. But when you do that, now other people you got to trust them that they're going to take care of that and that they're going to do it. So if you don't have that type of coaching and then quality control around it, there's a lot of uncertainties and a lot of hard lessons that you got to learn. And when it's tied to your like the business owner's personal finances, it's a problem, because
Yeah.
now every one of those mistakes is taken out of the pocket of the business owner.
Hmm.
So, how do you coach the people that you have when you kind of see the scenario that's going on, and they're still unable to identify that and kind of delegate or allow other people to own those tasks?
Yeah. There's a certain amount of structure to what I do. I've got a lot of good tools, a lot of good content that I use both through the content that I have just through Focal Point, which is my organization, and also just, I mean, there's so many good books out there, right? There's so many smart people with good ideas that have put them down on paper that are providing tools and frameworks for how to take this challenge and resolve it, right? And so for me, coaching work, a lot of time is somewhat project based, right? We identify a specific thing in the business that needs to be addressed, and we spend time building out the plan, building the structure, and working through that project. In order to get there, though, there's kind of certain steps that I take every client through, and they are, you know, we got to start out with we need to create a strategic plan. If they have one, we need to work through to make sure it's still relevant. In most cases, they don't have one. So we need to figure out what are the goals of the business? What are the goals of the goal? Why does that goal matter? You have this goal of growing to
Mm.
this much. Why? Like, is that just because you feel like you're a business and you're supposed to grow to that much, or is there a reason behind that? So let's try to unwind and get to the why and get to the purpose around things. So what are the goals? What do we need to do to get there? What's the plan of attack? What are the obstacles in front of us? How do we get around them? What are the resources you have at your disposal? Who are the people around you that can help you reach your goals? What are the timelines? What are the deadlines? How do we measure success, right? We're always going to start there. We're going to always figure out what the business owner, what do they do best, right? When they first opened their doors X number of years ago, why'd they open their doors and what type of work did they do? What made them successful? What made them happiest? What were they best at, right? And oh, by the way, how much time do you spend on that now? And where's your time going? Where's the rest of that time? Well, I'm best at, building relationships with my vendors. I'm best at, securing the biggest contract for their biggest clients. And I am great at motivating our sales force to get on doing more. Okay. What do you do during the day? I sign invoices and I do payroll and I manage this and I check this thing and I'm, switching out the coffee pot and emptying the garbage cans and, chief cook and bottle washer, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of the process, where can all these little, 80% of the stuff that's driving 20% of the value, how do we get that away from you? Right. And, for you, that was, well, I've got smart people who may or may not be ready to take on the things that I need to get rid of. So let's get them ready for it. So I can start
Mhm.
delegating, outsourcing,
More.
eliminating, so I can
Mhm.
rise up.
Because the big thing is like as these companies are growing, no matter what target, like if you're $100,000, I'm going to speak from my experience. So
Yeah.
when I came in, it was about like $100,000 business, and we're shooting for like the pie in the sky was 1 million in revenue, right?
Hmm.
And so if I was building myself and my team to be a $250,000 company, but the goal was 1 million. Now, when we get to 1 million, this team this team of leaders better have kept growing with us. Otherwise, that million is now we're over our skis on that a little bit. They're underprepared for that. So we kind of take a little bit of a reverse approach because we know like we've got real long vision and really big goals of impacting a lot of lives. And the best way we see to do that is through getting our leaders ahead of the growth trajectory of the business. So trying to get them to think rather than thinking like a $250,000 group of leaders, thinking like $1 million group of leaders. Because that $1 million group of leaders and decision makers, they can manage and make decisions $250,000 a lot easier actually, so now it's accelerated even more. But all in all, leadership development and the direction and growth trajectory of a business, in my opinion, it revolves around like how quickly decisions can get made. So is that something that you see become like a bottleneck in businesses, is decisions just don't get made or the buck gets passed over to somebody else to do it, or could you talk a little bit about just like decision making
Yeah.
and the importance of that as businesses are growing?
I mean, this is where like the process and the system comes in, right? And full disclosure, I am not a process system guy by nature. Am a
Same.
like right. I'm a sales guy. I'm an idea person. I like lots of different things going on, and you figure out after a while that if you don't create if I didn't create some structure in my life, my professional life, this is like as a sales guy, right? I would I would not I wouldn't sell anything, right? Because I wouldn't have any process by which I was, following up and doing this and checking boxes and moving people through the process of sales. And so I, taught myself to be a process guy. And along the way, like I said, the Black and Deckers of the world provided a lot of those tools and, you know, ingrained it in me.
Hmm.
And, everything comes down to process, right? There's certain like quotes and things that I've heard that just kind of stick with me always. Daniel Felt at Cura Home?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Daniel very well.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you do. You guys, yeah, I talked to him once, and this is probably 5, 6 years ago, and I had him on when I was doing a podcast, and I interviewed him. And the question I asked was, "You have grown this thing so quickly, so fast, and so successfully, and you've put so much structure into place so quickly, which is kind of rare for high growth entrepreneurial companies." I said, "How did you do it?" And what he said was, the quote was, "My rule with my people is I only answer a question once," right? And what he meant by that was as soon as one of his employees came to him with a question or a problem or a challenge, once they figured out what the solution was, he put it in the binder, right? He turned it into process. He turned it into policy. And, I don't know that he actually had a binder, but to me, the binder is, whatever your SOP is, right? If it's Google Docs, if it's, however you put things down where this is how we do things every time, he always did that. And so it doesn't mean that the question didn't come up again, but it meant that
Hmm.
there was no answer to that question. And all of his people knew, hey, you know, Janice came to me with this question and we solved it and it's in the binder. So don't come to me with the question anymore. Go to the binder, find the solution and implement it. To me, that's about as genius leadership as it gets, right? It's you boil things down to process and structure. And it doesn't mean that things don't change, right? It doesn't mean that the system for
Hmm.
your process by which you address an issue for when you're, $100,000 is probably going to look different than when you're $1 million and when you're $10 million. But there always needs to be a process. You just need to update the
Hmm.
process to fit the scale and the shape and the scope of what you're doing.
Definitely. I mean, that's one thing we've found is we'll build a process. Sometimes we were trying to build processes like too early, where we were at a stage in the business where we just needed to grow. But like having the best, most granular process for two technicians to do that takes 3 weeks and focusing on that instead of going and just selling as many accounts as you can in that 3 weeks. Like one of those has more value than the other, at least at that stage. But once there's more people, there's more hands in the pot, more people involved. Now there's a process that was established at whatever point or timeline in the business, and now we got to modify that and get it up to standards here. So because you can process the heck out of it, but you got other people doing it. Now we got to train, and now we got to have quality control built in so that if the process and the training are going well and we think everything's perfect, but it's not, now we wait and we see it turns out we're not doing the training or running this process accurately, and that's resulting in not the right result. So we got to go take a look, identify what the hell's going on, and solve that. So is there like a size of business that you primarily work with that like less than 1 million, less than 10 million? Like where are you at in there?
I talk more about headcount than dollars. I like businesses that have between, well, 5 and 50 employees.
Five and
And
50.
that's
Okay.
and I mean, that could be a 500,000. I mean, a 5 employee business could be $500,000. It could be 5 million. It just kind of depends on what they do, right?
Hmm.
And so the dollars kind of don't matter to me as much as the size of the business. And the reason is, and that's also not to say that I don't work below that, I don't work above that, but just like, I said, I liked having the boss down the hall. I like flatter organizations because change happens faster, right? It's hard to push something from, top of the chain 18 levels down to where it's getting executed. It takes a while, right? If you've got, the leader and a leadership team, and then the producers, you can make changes happen fast because the conversations happen quickly. Owner decides we're doing this, they distribute that information, bring in leadership and talk about, okay, how do we execute it? They go thumbs up, great. They push it down to their people, and now we're rolling. And then also that feedback's going to come up a lot faster as well. you know Here's why this thing doesn't work right now, Matt, because we've got these technicians out doing this and we need to fix it. Okay, great. Good to know. Let's work on it. Right? You can address issues quickly. You can make change happen more quickly.
That's super powerful. Is there anything that you've learned through all the conversations you've had or all the years that you've been in business that you wish maybe you knew a little bit sooner? Could have had you end up in a different direction or handled a particular scenario a little bit with a little bit more poise?
Yeah, great question. You mentioned like bottlenecks and choke points and things like that. And I I see the way I used to run my teams in that same context. In I, as the leader, was the choke point, right? And what I mean by that is I was a problem solver, right? When I was running my teams, and I always thought that was a good thing, right? Like, hey, my job is to clear the decks for you, to get things figured out for you, so you can just go and make things happen and get things done and do your job. And so my management, style was, you come to me with a problem and I say, do this and you will be successful, which is which is great. And I was right more times than I was wrong, which is good. But none of my people, they didn't get a chance to learn, right? They didn't get a chance
Well,
to dig in and solve their own stuff.
and what they learned was Adam's the easy button,
Right.
right?
And
And
now,
and
guess what?
and
When I'm
now
not there, things aren't getting done. Right? Now I take a vacation and I come back, 4 days later,
and
and
it's
there's
worse.
this pile of stuff because I was the choke point. Rather than
Hmm.
saying, let's talk about how you can figure this out. And that way, when I'm gone, you can just take care of it. That's what I wish I would have known that, 20 years ago.
Fascinating. So, how do
Yeah.
you coach somebody to fix that? Because I bet that there's
Well,
like a majority of people out there that handle problems or instances. I know my a couple of our leaders, like they don't even realize that it's happening when they do it. They just do it because now they don't have a monkey on their back and that person has the solution. But now you got a long term monkey because you keep answering all the questions for them.
yeah. I think there can be this. I did a series of like leadership development workshops with an organization last year, and we talked about this. And what we figured out in their company culture was, the culture was, you have this job and you take care of these things and you address these problems. And then you get promoted and you take that responsibility with you and you take those problems with you. And then you get the new problems that you solve for. And then you do it again and again and again. And what happens is, there's job security in that, I think, sometimes, where people are like, hey, I know all the solutions and
Hmm.
I'm the resource to fix the problems. Therefore, I am indispensable. But when there's nobody else that can do it, it means you better be doing it. Otherwise, it's not getting done. And so, for me, what those conversations look like are exactly kind of there's a point when you need to get people to recognize that they are the choke point, that they are the bottleneck. And, look, Matt, sometimes there's things that come out that it's like, there's a moment, there's a point of clarity when they go, I never realized that. Now I realize it. More often than not, we know our issues, right?
Hmm.
We know where we need to get better, and we either don't have the discipline to do it on our own, or we don't know what the first two steps to take are, or we are worried that we won't be able to accomplish it. So why start? And usually it's all three, right?
Hmm.
You know,
That's good.
there's a reason people have trainers, right? There's a reason why I go to the gym and I work with a small group of people with one gal yelling at me because she has a plan and she knows how to
Hmm.
get me better at it. She knows how to get me to, you know, dig my heels into the ground and use my core when I'm doing a deadlift so I don't explode my back so I can get
Hmm.
stronger, right? We need people holding us accountable. We need people that can say, you're doing a great job here. And if you do maybe just this slight different thing, or tell me what you're feeling and let's figure it out so you can get better at it,
Hmm.
that's how we advance. That's that's what I do for a living.
That's awesome. Well, I know we're kind of coming to time here. I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you want to add at the end here? Any key takeaways you want somebody to have, or maybe if somebody's interested in seeing what it would look like to work with you in either one of your small groups or one-on-one sessions, how they can contact you?
Yeah, I've got a lot of the trepidation, whatever it might be, but sometimes people are like, I don't know if I'm a good fit for you, or if we should, I don't know if you want to talk to me. And I've got a buddy. He's been married for 15 years now, but before that 15 years, he was single for a decade when I was married, and I'm still married. But we'd be chatting, and I'd be like, "Hey, Ryan, I met this girl at this thing and blah blah blah. Would you ever you want me to introduce you?" He's again the things you remember, right? Things that stick with you. He would say to me, Adam, I will go on a first date with anybody. I'm like, great, let's get you on a first. He goes, it might not be a second date, but that's how I look at it. Is I'll go on a first date with anybody. If there's somebody out there who's like, I'm kind of curious about this, or I'm dealing with some things in my business, and I don't want to come across as a crazy person, so I'm not going to reach out, just reach out. Let's have a conversation. It's usually the first one's 20 minutes, and it gives us an idea on if we like each other, right? If there's a connection, if there's a vibe, and if the thing that it sounds like you're dealing with is something that I have any value in offering some ideas. And sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't, and it's always a good conversation. So,
That's
you
awesome.
know, I just want to talk to people. I just want to have, I'll go on a first date with anybody.
I love that. All right. Well, thanks again for joining, Adam. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate all the ongoing support. Keep sharing it. Give us your feedback. I'll give it a thumbs up and put the little bell so you keep getting notifications when we're putting out new episodes. Thank you so much for joining again, Adam. You guys should reach out to
Pleasure,
him
man.
if you got any questions. But until next time, keep hustling. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Homegrown Hustle. It's been an honor to share the stories of local legends who make our community thrive. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Please stay tuned for more insight and inspiration. We got a lot of heat in the chamber. This is Matthew Eichmann saying peace out until next time. Get hustling.